one of our most popular talks last year was with Pam Dingle, Pirate Pam, in her life vest. How many people remember this talk? It was a great talk. So I've been promised by Pam that we're going to get a sequel to that talk, which I cannot wait for. So I think like on our list of most highly rated talks from last year, it was Pirate Pam and her rousing tale of the sea. So please help me to welcome Pamela Dingle, who's the Director of Identity Standards at Microsoft, for the sequel, Part 2.
Right. Hi, everybody. It is nice to see you. My name is Pamela Dingle, and I am the Director of Identity Standards at Microsoft. But what's really amazing, at least for me, is that, as Megan just said, I got renewed for a second season. I mean, I literally get to do a sequel to what I talked about last year, and I'm really excited about that. I want to take a very different approach, and hopefully it will be useful for you in your everyday lives. So, of course, we need to recap season 1. We'll do that very quickly. Season 1 involved hijinks on the high seas. We had self-inflating life jackets. We had hatches that had to be battened down. We had crew members with, questionable sartorial, options at their disposal. But I just need to tell you that between season 1's end and season 2's start, this particular crew member, he saw the light and has adopted phishing resistance authentication. And I could not be more proud. It's nice to see those kinds of season developments. We also talked about waves of attacks. We defined 4 waves of attacks in our last season that are still relevant today. Right? Those 4 waves of attacks are password attacks, which of course is this imminent tsunami bearing down on us as we speak. We defined multi-factor authentication, or MFA attacks, which target things like SMS, multi-factor authentication, et cetera. We defined post-authentication attacks, meaning attacks that happen after you log in, rather than attacks that happen before you log in. And then we talked about the monstrous beast that is out there waiting for us, which is infrastructure compromise, as in attacking the identity infrastructure that you use to keep your people safe. All of these 4 things, as I said, still relevant, still out there. But here's the thing. Last year, I gave a number, and this number was 1,000 password attacks a second. That is what we, as Microsoft, were seeing on our platform. 1,000 password attacks a second. That's a pretty crazy number. So does anyone want to guess what that number might be this year? I mean, clearly it's going to go down, right? Yeah? No one's going to bite? Oh, man. Well, that number is now 4,000 password attacks a second. So it's a factor of 4 increase. And you might think, okay, well, 4,000 a second is not so bad. What could that possibly mean? Well, 4,000 password attacks every single second on our platform. That's 345,600,000 separate password attacks today. And hopefully you're doing the numbers here, right? What small, tiny fraction of success does an attacker have to be able to get into and compromise accounts? At 345,600,000 password attacks a day. These attackers are simply playing the numbers, and they don't have to compromise everyone. They just have to find the one person that does something predictable, and they're in. And here's the problem, right? Right now, the pool is still big. We know that there's lots of people using passwords. And so the relative ratio of attacks to victims is still, maybe not so bad. I mean, by the way, if I make any math statements at all, just take it with every grain of salt you own, because I'm not a math person. So, but we know it's a big pool. We know there's lots of people still using passwords, and we have a large number of attacks. But there is a ratio there that's maybe not so bad. I don't want to be the one that's the last one in the pool, because these attacks are not going to stop. They're basically free to perform. And the pool is getting slower. We are getting smaller, I mean. We are seeing people abandon passwords and move towards multi-factor authentication, right? Or if not abandon passwords, at least augment passwords. So, that pool really is getting smaller. But here's the thing. It's so easy to stand up here and point at the hurricane and say, oh, she's a beauty. She's so dangerous. Oh, what do you think the wind speed is there? Oh, man, that's gonna sink some ships. Oh, we better be careful. It's so easy to be the color commentator on the Weather Channel. It's a heck of a lot harder to be the reporter in the rain, huddled in the little news reporter jacket they make all those poor people wear, right? Like literally the entire hurricane is hitting them in the face. Well, guess what? That's where we are. That's where 4,000 password attacks a second puts us. It puts us on the water, right? We are in a situation now where we are being buffeted. We have wind gusts coming at us. We have unpredictable waves. We don't know if we're going to get knocked over and come back up. We don't know if we're going to be demasted, right? We are not looking at this from space, from our nice, comfy commentator seats. We are in this. And any experienced sailor will tell you that when this happens, when you're here, when you're in the eye wall of that hurricane, all you can do is sail. You don't get to plan. You don't get to do all of these additional things. That time has passed. You need to watch. You need to be present in the moment, and you need to pay attention. Because the only way you get through this is by understanding the context, understanding your environment, knowing when things are wrong, and acting fast. And here's the thing about it, you have to act. If you're in this situation, you're on the deck of this boat with those waves and hurricane force wind, not acting is a choice. You don't get to go below for a cigarette. It doesn't happen. You have to be there. You have to be managing the forces that are arrayed against you. And so this is one way that I think we can take that idea of being present and paying attention into account. This is called the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. And if you're not familiar with it, it's, in some sense, a philosophy that you can apply to how you look at your identity infrastructure, right? It's got some phases, right? So let's see, what do we got? Phase 1, identify, right? You have a hypothesis, scientific method, right? You think you know how you're going to protect your folks. Step 2, protect. Now you're going to turn that hypothesis into an actual enforcement. You're going to keep some people out. You're going to let some people in according to some kind of logic. Okay, great. Step 3, detect. You're paying attention. You're in the moment. You're not just ignoring it. You haven't set it and forget it. You're looking to see, are things going off the rails? Are things working the way that they should be, right? Next up, respond. Sorry, there's a lot of them. There's quite a few of them, right? Respond. So now if things do go off the rails, now you have choices and reactions you have to take. You need to investigate what's gone off the rails. Does it really represent risk to your business? Do you have further breach issues you have to look at, right? That response piece is huge, and the time is critical. And then the last piece is recover. And that's your time for reflection. What could you have done differently? What can you do differently now to make sure that you don't go off the rails again? That whole piece, right? So let's see if I can do that. I practiced this, I really did, right? Identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Yes, I did it. Woo-hoo, I did it. Also, I can't not do this because I may never be here again. And I don't know if I'll get season 3, so I just have to say, if I'm going to do identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, it can only finish with YMCA. All right, am I right? All right. So we have this framework we can apply, right? And understanding that this whole thing is a circle. You don't just get halfway through it and stop. You go all the way through, and you keep going through. And that is your listening and adapting. That's paying attention, right, and being present in the moment. So what does that look like? Well, let me give you one example. In 2017, Microsoft released a feature called passwordless phone sign-in. What this was we took a second factor that we had already deployed, which was a push notification being sent to a phone, and we turned it from a second factor authentication, right, done after a password authentication, to a first factor authentication. Now, we deployed this, and we had great success with it. We really did see a lot of people using this, and for a couple of years, all was well. Now, the thing to know about this kind of push notification is, in a perfect world, there are kind of two ways that it can work, right? What you expect is to get a pop-up on your phone when you try to log in to something like a laptop, right? And so you're presented with an interface, something like this. You have two buttons, an approve button and a deny button. And the perfect world kind of thing is very posh. It's like, oh, I have tried to authenticate on my phone, and now I see a pop-up. I believe that this is good, and I shall approve. Ta-da! And they're happy, right? So in a perfect world, 100%, 100 out of 100 people who receive an expected pop-up will click approve, right? And then there's the other piece, which, by the way, the approve side is like the huge, huge part of the distribution curve, is approve, right? And then there's this little itty-bitty little tail, long tail here. And those are the cases where you didn't initiate the authentication, right? And you're basically living your life, living your best life out in the world, and a pop-up comes up on your phone for no reason that you can discern, right? And now in this case, in a perfect world, you would look at that pop-up and you would say, I did not ask for this. This appears to be an authentication, and I shall deny. And you click the deny button, right? This all sounds really good. But we all know what actually happens, right? Most people, yes, will deny a pop-up. But just every so often, that pop-up comes out, and the response is not, I shall do a thing. It's, get out of my face! Why is it there? Leave me alone, right? Make it go away. And that button-smashing reaction became a factor, became a statistically significant factor that was detected. And so what did we do? Well, there were lots of things going on. And by the way, this is not any kind of Microsoft brag. Like, first of all, clearly it's not a brag, right? Because we're talking about how things are changing. But this is not just Microsoft's product. There are lots of products that do this same thing in the same way, and who were also trying to deal with this threat. And so, we went through our response. We dealt with issues like MFA bombing, where attackers would figure out they could send you 100 messages at 3 a.m. And you just had to be groggy enough once to smash approve, and they would get in. So we iterated. We actually went for, there it is. We actually went for a number system with the idea that people aren't going to click on a number they don't recognize. But guess what happened? People still did the, get it out of my face, leave me alone. And the best thing is we got better, because now 3 out of the 4 buttons that somebody could mash to get this pop-up to dismiss led to no access. And only one of them led to approvals, right? So now we've actually gone from, of our tiny little tail, we've further reduced the number of times where a button smashing incident can take you to a situation that we don't want, right? So we're better. But here's where we've gotten now, right? We kept listening, we kept changing, we kept detecting. Right now we still use number matching, so you're still gonna see a number that pops up on the screen. Oh, whoops, sorry. But what you see is you have to enter the number, and then you have to click yes, it's me, or no, it's not. And that has, as far as we can tell, destroyed the behavior that was causing the issue. Because the only button on this screen that you can now smash to make the screen go away is the no, it's not me button, right? To do anything else, you have to enter a number and you have to hit yes. And it turns out that rage making up a number is not a thing. So we did it, right? We got there. It was a process. We had multiple cycles. We had to listen, we had to take customer feedback. We got our incident response teams involved. This was not a simple thing. But what it was a process that got us to a place that's better. Now the question is, why am I telling you this, right? Why am I giving you this lovely parable? Well, the trick is that in 2017, I watched this all happen. I didn't work for Microsoft at the time, but hanging out with my buddies, having a beer, maybe a conference just like this. And the conversations we were having were exactly that weatherman in the hurricane type of conversations. Passwordless phone sign-in, that's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea, right? If you go on Twitter, you're gonna find me probably in 2017 saying that's a terrible idea, right? But here's the thing, it wasn't. In hindsight, looking back on it, right? At the time, we rolled out a phone sign-in that worked for almost everyone and had a very insignificant statistical chance of abuse. That changed over time, and we had to respond to fix it. But we are better off for having gone through that cycle. And that whole idea of that's a terrible idea doesn't get us anywhere. Because this is what we have to do now. As an industry, every single one of us, we have to figure out how to sail the darn boat, right? We don't get to sit back and go, oh, well, that authentication method, that's not good enough, right? Oh, that one's got one flaw. Well, I'm not going to protect a single one of my users because there's one flaw. Maybe it only affects one part of my community. We can't afford that. That is choosing through doing nothing. And we cannot do that anymore. What we have to be doing is defense in depth. We have to be deploying cycle after cycle, spinning plates everywhere in the world, right? Everywhere we can possibly spin those plates so that attackers, even if they can get through one issue, if they get through one authentication method, they don't get through the next, or they don't get through the governance layer, or they don't get through the device detection layer. That's where we have to go. So I went to the Bottle Rock concert this year. How many people here have gone to a music festival of some kind? Let's see, okay, fair number of you. So you might find the wristbands pretty typical then, right? And in the case of Bottle Rock, when you get through the doors, they do a document check on you. They check your driver's license to see if you're of age to buy alcohol, and they give you a wristband. So if you have the wristband, you get booze. If you don't have the wristband, you don't get booze, right? It's very, very simple for all the park operators. And this is a bearer token, right? You don't have to, none of the people inside of that park have to check your identity. They just check your wristband. But the thing is, the beauty of that attack is if you can steal somebody else's wristband, you can buy all the booze you want, and you have bypassed the original checks, right? So this is token theft, and token theft is something that we are going through iterative cycles right now, both in the standards world, as we've just ratified the demonstration of proof of possession standard, but also within Microsoft. So there's a feature here called Entra ID conditional access token protection, right, which is a big fancy word, but really all it is that exact wristband. It makes sure that if you ask for a token on a given device, when you go back and try and refresh that token, you have to be on the same device. That's the check it makes. Now the problem is it's not exact, and we don't always know whether we're getting false positives or not. And so the question becomes, what do we need to do? Well, we have to cycle. We have to pay attention. We have to be present. So that's what you're going to see over the next few years, right? Is that feature perfect? No. Is it going to get better because we are going through that entire cybersecurity cycle? Yes, right? And the whole industry is doing this. All right, so one other thing, there's a governance ring at the middle of this cybersecurity framework. And governance is really a fundamental form of anomaly detection, right? I mean, ever since there was a SOX attestation, we've been doing anomaly detection. It's like, well, this person shouldn't have access to this application. Wait a minute, let's investigate, right? It's the wait a minute, let's investigate that's important. Now, what you're seeing here is a rope clutch, and it's super simple. If the clutch is open, right, the lever's up, then the rope can move. The clutch is closed, the rope is stuck, right? Now, when you're sailing, you really want to know which ropes can move and really know which ropes cannot move. So the labels on these clutches may not be necessary for any of the veterans. They may understand that the blue rope is the spinnaker, right? But not everybody is a veteran. And it may be that somebody else opens that clutch, and then you try and deploy your spinnaker, and that would be bad, at least as I understand it. I'm not exactly a massive spinnaker deployer. However, you get the idea, right? The labels are context. They're simple context that anyone can look at and possibly realize that there's a problem. That's what we want, right? So again, another iteration cycle, another innovation loop that we're working on is something called privileged roles. And holy cow, this one's simple. When we show you all the roles, I don't know, there's hundreds of roles that you can deploy in the Microsoft Azure system. We simply label the ones that can cause privilege elevation as privileged, right? And this matters, of course, because you can embed and inherit these roles all the way through, right? So that's it. We're just calling a spade a spade. But it turns out sometimes you need to know that the spade is a spade. All right, so we're getting close to the end. We're going to do a speed run through something that's also really important. We've so far talked about Microsoft security. We've talked through the highfalutin security detections and the less highfalutin security detections. But let's talk about platforms. So platforms are critical to everyone in this room, whether somebody you know is using a laptop, right, that's probably got Windows on it. So this is maintaining this platform is a responsibility. It is a privilege. But most importantly, holy cow, those innovation cycles have a completely different spin to them. They take a lot longer. And I'm just going to cover 3 ways in which they do that, right? And they're all very exciting in different ways. So first off, I don't know if you can see this or guess what's missing here. That's right. So that's missing the small, tiny little icon with the key on it that has been essentially not removable for most of the lifetime of Windows, as I understand it, right? No password authentication in your credential providers on Windows. It sounds so small. What, it's just a UI change. It's huge. It's absolutely huge because that entire operating system layer was predicated on the assumption of passwords always being there, always being a backup or a fallback, right? So this is actually a huge, huge change that we're making. And just to back that up, right, this is a big deal. So for anyone who does not understand what this is, NTLM, which is NT LAN Manager Authentication Protocol, we have promised that Windows 11 will be the last release of the operating system that contains NTLM. Now that doesn't sound so big a deal either, except this thing, the default authentication mechanism in Windows has been Kerberos for 23 years. 23 years this has been, quote unquote, deprecated. We're finally making the promise to remove it, but the reason why we can do it now is because we actually have viable alternatives, right? We had to have a fallback. You can't fall back to nothing. And by the way, I think that's going to be a big theme this week, is exactly that, right? So this is a big deal. But now let's talk about what we're replacing it with. We're going to do a super speed run through the passkey implementation that now exists Windows 11. So this is 22H2 as the version. All right, here we go. We're going to GitHub because GitHub, if you want to play with passkeys, the GitHub relying party implementation is incredible. I highly recommend it. Here we are. We've gone to the passwords and authentication section. We're going to click the button there that says add a passkey. Great. Boom, I'm on a PC, as it turns out. Windows Hello already knows who I am. It already knows there's a platform authenticator available for me, and it already knows that I prefer to use my face. So I'm just going to click OK here, right? And if I didn't want to, by the way, use my platform authenticator, there's a button there that says use another device. So I've got an out if I want the out. But in this case, perfect, clicking it, right? Control goes from the platform, where it was, back to GitHub, and GitHub confirms that it has received a credential. And now I get to name it, right, do a final save, and I have a passkey. So There was no typing in that. There was literally no typing. I did not type a username. I did not type a password, right? I clicked, I think, 4 times, maybe 5. But here's the next thing. What you can see here is you can also manage that passkey from the Windows platform, which doesn't sound that crazy, but wait, this is the exciting part. Are you guys ready? I'm super excited. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, come on. You can delete passkeys. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but we have been waiting for this feature for ages. It's been long expected, so I'm super excited. But wait, there's more. I have a passkey. I have to worry about what happens if I lose my laptop. So I'm going to click Add Passkey again, and now I get a different initial experience because GitHub knows, that maybe I want something different. And now it's, helping me to understand I might actually want to attach my iPhone, get a passkey on my iPhone. So I'm going to click on the little picture of the QR code there, right? And this is what I see. I get to click on passkey with my camera, right? Click on the QR code. I get to do Face ID and hit continue. And basically, that's it. I now have 2 passkeys. That's how fast it is, right? Again, I get the confirmation from GitHub that it's received a credential. I get to name it. And now I can see my passkeys. Not only can I see my passkeys, I have 2 passkeys, right? I can now basically use my passkey from everywhere. I get the super quick biometrics on first login. I get the remote access on my iPad, on my iPhone, on my Mac OS. And if I lose my PC, I have a way to replace. So this is a pretty good ceremony now, right? It's clean. It all uses the same language now. The relying party and the platform talk together. So this is a big deal, and I'm very, very excited. The other thing that you should know about this is that you can go see exactly this demo in our booth, at the Microsoft booth here in the expo, because I airdropped the passkey from my iPhone to all of the demo friends. So I've tested that as well. It works. It's not as easy as you would expect. All right. Enough of all this. It's time to go and eat. But let me just say that we are all tied together. Like, as much as we may feel independent, we are not. My logins can affect your business. Your logins can affect my business. We have to take care of each other. But the other thing we have to do is we have to share. We have to be talking about our indicators of compromise, sharing stories. That's why this room is important. You're literally sitting with the grizzled sailors who've seen it and done it and been there. If you don't know folks in this room, this is your chance to actually have a beer and hear the stories that maybe you won't hear in a Zoom meeting. So please take advantage of it. All of the folks you see on stage are, generally in it for the right reasons. They want to talk to you. They want to help. So make sure that you're thinking about how you can be a part of this community, because it is being part of the solution. Now, I will skip through that for time. Oh, no, it's a build. OK, fine. There we go. This is what really matters, right? Whatever it is you need to define your cycles, find it, right? Make it a predictable part of your infrastructure, right? If your folks are only dealing with 1 or 2 sections of this cycle, you need to look at what it means to bring them into the entire big picture. Second, if you are using single-factor password authentication today, you're in the right place to get help and have people talk to you about the real truths of what works and what doesn't, right? And how you can get to the point where you are moving yourself away from that pool full of sharks. And then the last thing, is to talk to Eric Donner. So Eric, I don't know if he's in this room or not. I can't tell. Oh, he is there. He's right there. The spotlight. Where's this? We need the spotlight. So Eric works in the Windows 11 team. He can talk in detail about some of the things I very, very quickly went through. And then the last piece here is if you do care a lot about the Microsoft world specifically, there's a new publication called Entra.news. I would highly recommend it. It takes a lot of time to talk about all these different features and break them down into really accessible bits and chunks. Now, version 14 is out now, but I will say that version 13 might be interesting to you because they took the time to collate a lot of the thoughts and testaments and tributes to a dear friend of ours who's gone too soon. All right, we've done it. We need to get out there and sail this vessel. So please strap on your fallies, get geared up, and get ready for some boisterous weather ahead. Thank you all very much for the time. I appreciate it.